All right. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. I'm really glad to see some familiar faces and some new faces. It is wonderful to have all you guys in my class. I'll tell you confidentially, this is my favorite of all the sciences. I think anatomy is the most amazing subject because it is the only subject you will ever take that you will use every single day of your entire life. A knowledge of how your body is put together and how those parts work together will help you with every day of the rest of your entire life. And there's nothing else you can say that about. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. I'm glad to be studying it with you. All right. Thank you for being on time. I always start the classes right away at the hour, whatever time the hour is where your part of the world is. But the first couple minutes, I usually start by answering any questions that you have. Since we're so new into the school year, you probably don't have any questions yet. But if you do, now's the time. Also, you don't have to save your questions until we get to these live classes. Send me your questions as you have them, and I'm happy to answer them right away. So my name is Dr. Joseph, and I am your guide as you are going to be going through this course. I like to think of it that way. I'm your assistant. The learning is up to you. So you are going to move through this material on your own, and I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you. And I want to go over a few things that are just important bits of information that you need before we start talking about anatomy. So I'm going to move quickly through some of this. This is just stuff that I think is important for you to know that I want to make sure we cover. So stop me at any point. You don't ever have to wait until the end of a class to ask questions. I like you to, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I like you to ask the questions as you have them. So I just had a student send a private message to me. I want to make sure that you guys understand the difference between a private message and a public one. So when you look at chats there, if it says direct message, that's coming just to me. If you want to send, like, answer a question and you're throwing it out there to the whole group, make sure that you click the blue box and choose everyone in meeting for that. If you want to write just to me, that's fine. I prefer conversation when we're having a dialogue. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but if you want to type your answers when I ask something, you can. I prefer that we have a discussion, that we talk with one another. All right. If you are new to Canvas and you have not come to AIM Academy before, or you haven't used Canvas before, please make sure that you watch the tutorial video that I put in the classroom resources section. You see it by clicking right here, and it will take you to a page that looks like this, and right there, how to navigate in Canvas. That's a video that shows you how to do it. I don't want to spend time in the live class teaching you how to use Canvas because most of you guys are returning AIM students. You will notice that most of the lessons have an outline at the beginning that you can use to take notes. Now, those outlines are for your benefit. You don't have to submit them, but I highly do recommend note taking. You also might find it useful to take notes during these live classes, but you will never be tested on anything that is only in these live classes. It can help you, though, to remember things that we talk about if you write them down. So that's up to you. You'll never be tested on something found only here. Now, sometimes things are found in both, and that's fair game. Now, there's a lesson in the course information section that talks about the importance of taking notes. Please be sure to read that over. It is important. It can be, especially as you're going through the written work, it can help you to remember them. Thank you for having your cameras on. We have to have webcams on at least at the beginning of class. That is AIM Academy's policy. So going forward after today, I will be asking you to turn your camera on at least for a minute at the very beginning so that I can verify that you are who you say you are. Now, I also think that it's a good way for us to get to know each other. I get to know you when I look at your faces on the screen, and you get to know each other. That's fine, Abe, no problem. So that I think it's important for a couple reasons. Not only does it make us feel more like a class, like we are interested in one another, but also there may come a time, you guys are honors students here, you're higher level science students, and there may come a day when you want a recommendation from me, maybe for a college or a course that you want to take or a program that you want to be a part of. If I know you, if I've looked at your face, I've seen you week after week, I hear you talk, it's a lot easier for me to be able to give a good recommendation. If I don't really know you at all, it's harder for me to give a recommendation. Not impossible, but harder. So leaving your cameras on, I think, is an important step. I want to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence because it has really, really changed education just in the last couple of years. It's only been out for about a year and a half, this ChatGPT and other AI programs. Now, you have to be between the ages of 13 and 18 in order to use most AI programs at all. I think all of you guys are over 13. But if you're not allowed to use it at all. If you are between 13 and 18, you have to have your parents' permission. Now, you can think of these programs, these AI programs, as being like a friend who knows everything, who's sitting right beside you and helping you to understand your concepts. That's good use of AI. That's a good way to make it be meaningful for you. You can also think of it as a friend that's sitting next to you, giving you all the answers so you don't have to learn. That's not a good use of AI. You don't want to use it in a way that prevents learning. You want to use it in a way that enhances learning. We've got a couple of tools that we're going to use at AIM Academy this year to help you to be able to make good use of AI and not, a bad use, for lack of a better word. Really, you don't want to use it to cheat. You want to use AI to help you to learn. So, for example, let's say I give you a question that says, tell me the difference between the digestive system and the integumentary system. And you don't remember what the word integumentary is. Well, you can go to ChatGPT and say, what is the integumentary system? And it'll give you an answer, right? So if that helps, oh, yeah, that's right. I remember that. Now I can write my own answer. That's good. You don't want to, though, copy and paste. Basically, anytime you're copying and pasting, that's what we call plagiarism. And plagiarism will get you thrown out of college. It will get you fired from a job. It happens almost once a month. I see some famous person somewhere who's been accused of plagiarism and may have lost their job for doing that. So I think that in the long run, it's more important to make your time count. You guys have to be here. Somebody signed you up for this. Hopefully it was you. Hopefully you're the ones who want to learn about anatomy. It may be a field that you're going into. Think about it this way. If your appendix ruptured tonight, would you want your doctor to be someone who got through school using AI? Probably not. Next time you're on an airplane, you want the pilot to be someone who used AI to learn how to fly a plane? Well, that's going to be you someday. Someday you may be that surgeon. You may be that nurse. You may be that dentist. And your patients are going to be depending on you to actually know, to actually have learned the content. So work with academic integrity. That's really what it comes down to. So we've got a couple of programs that we're going to be using with to help you along this line. Now, one of them actually is an AI program that is embedded right in Canvas. And this is called Class Companion or Classroom Companion. It's brand new. We've only had it for a couple of weeks, so I haven't even really experimented with it yet. You won't see it show up in my class for a couple of weeks because I want to get the year started without it first, and then we'll add it. It is an AI that you are able to have a dialogue with. So back to that integumentary system. Suppose my question was, compare and contrast the digestive system and the integumentary system. So you go to this Class Companion and you say, what is the integumentary system? And it says, oh, that, tells you what it is. And you say, okay, well then is it correct? Then you type your compare and contrast in and you say, how does this sound? And it says, well, that's a good comparison. That's not, but you need to work a little bit more on the contrast. How are they different? It walks you through how to put together an answer. So it can be a really important learning tool. And I will use it as we go on. The other new thing that we have this year is called plagiarismcheck.org. And you'll see it in some of the written assignments. So as an example, if there is an exam at the end of one of the chapters and it has 6 questions on the exam, and you type out your answer to those 6 questions, you submit that, you immediately get a report back from plagiarismcheck.org. And it'll say to you, 40% of your paper or your answers that you gave were plagiarized. And here's the websites that they came from. You can say, okay, now I know what I can do and what I can't do. You rewrite it, you send it to me, and I grade your second attempt. So on the written work, you'll be given 2 attempts at most of the assignments. And the first one will be, we'll use plagiarismcheck.org. And then the second one you'll submit to me. Once again, I'll talk more about this as we move through the first couple of weeks. I just wanted to let you know you're going to be seeing that. You're going to introduce that this year. At the very top of the screen in all the written lessons, you'll see this little box that's called Immersive Reader. If it helps you to have someone read to you, that's what Immersive Reader does. So it'll read the text on the page to you. Now it's a computer reading, so it's not perfect. It's not the best, but it will read and it can help you to learn the terms of some of the things that you might not have encountered before. I have narration in some of the lessons. I have the vocabulary narration in almost all of the lessons, but use this Immersive Reader if you want to. Now, it only reads the text. It doesn't show the pictures. So if it's talking to you, it's best if you have 2 screens open so that you can be looking at the pictures while the text is describing it to you. And of course, it only reads the pages that are right in Canvas. If we go to an outside source, it won't read those, and it doesn't read quizzes either. All right, that's it for the business end. Anybody have any questions? All right, send them my way. If you do, I'm always available. So as we start talking about the study of the human body, there's a term that is critical. It's really foundational for everything that we're going to learn. We'll use this term all the way through the year to describe the state of health in a living thing. This is what basically all the activity of your body is aiming for all the time. The number one job of all the cells in your body is to maintain homeostasis. So homeostasis is one of what we call the unifying principles in biological sciences. And anatomy and physiology is one of those branches of biology. So there are 4 unifying principles that are important to life, including human life, and they form the foundation of modern biology. One is the cell theory. So we'll talk about cells. We'll talk about what cells are made of, how those different organelles function. It tells us that all living things are made of cells, and those cells come from cells that existed before, and all life comes from life that existed before. The gene theory is another unifying principle. It tells us that your traits are embedded in your genes. Your traits come from the genes that you inherited from your parents. You got half your genes from your mom, you got half your genes from your dad. Those genes are located on chromosomes, and those chromosomes are found inside almost every cell of the body. There are a couple of cells in the body that eject their DNA. They kick their nucleus out. Anybody know what those are? Anybody have a guess what kind of cell shortly after it's formed ejects its nucleus so it doesn't have DNA anymore? We'll talk about it about halfway through the year, but I won't make you wait that long. Red blood cells. Red blood cells have that kind of donut flattened shape because they've ejected their nucleus. They do that so that they can hold more oxygen. It gives them more space for the protein called hemoglobin that holds on to oxygen. Red blood cells are what carry oxygen to all the different parts of the body. So we'll talk a good bit about the gene theory as we continue on. Evolutionary theory is another unifying principle. It tells us that all living things share some characteristics because they have a common ancestor. And this helps to explain the unity and the diversity of life. And then finally, this big one here, homeostasis. It tells us that we have to maintain this balance in order to survive. So I want to focus today on homeostasis, talk about what it is. So we know that we have to have some pretty constant conditions in order for the human body to work properly. Living cells can only function within a pretty narrow range of conditions. Can't get too hot, it can't get too cold, or you die. You can't have too much oxygen in your blood. You can't have too little, or you die. You have to have the right amount of water. You have to have the right amount of nutrients. Your pH level, the brain will only tolerate a very narrow range of acid base, or pH level. So it has lots of mechanisms in order to keep that balanced. The problem is all the conditions that we live in change all the time. We have to have a way to change with it while keeping stable on the inside. It's that internal stability that we call homeostasis. And most of the functions of the body are aimed at maintaining that homeostasis. So there's a couple ways that the body maintains homeostasis. Feedback is one of them. We have two feedback mechanisms, two ways that the body brings back changes: negative feedback and positive feedback. So negative feedback brings stability, positive feedback increases the change. Try to remember those two. Negative feedback brings stability. Really, you only have to remember one. If you remember one, you know the other. Negative feedback brings stability. Positive feedback doesn't bring stability. It increases whatever the change was that's happened. Now, we often in life, we think of the word negative as being bad and positive as being good. That's not true. In anatomy, when we're talking about homeostasis, something positive can be bad. So a positive lab result that you get for something that you go in and have blood work done for, that could mean you have a problem, right? If you have a positive test, that means you have a problem. With feedback, neither of these is bad and neither of them is good. They just have different jobs. So this saying right here can help you to remember it. If we narrow it down to these two sayings, negative feedback brings stability, positive feedback increases the change. The body senses an internal change. Something's happening and it says we need to undo that change. That's negative feedback. It works to reverse or negate the change. In positive feedback, the body senses a change and it increases that change. It speeds up or increases that change. Can you guys think of anything, any situation where you might want to increase the change? Anastasia.
If you have like a wound, and you need clotting, like, um, you want it to like you want the cells that help clot, you'd want more and more to come so that you can, eventually heal the wound.
Yep, that's an excellent example. Because if the body brought negative feedback in and tried to undo the change that was happening, you would continue to bleed. We want the bleeding to stop. So we want positive feedback in this case until a certain point. We don't want all the blood of the body to clot. Clotting is amazing. You guys will be shocked when we get to talking about blood in the cardiovascular unit, because the blood clotting mechanism is really, really complex. We won't have to learn all the steps of it, but you'll appreciate the complexity of it, because it increases to a certain point and then all kinds of signals go, okay, stop here. Otherwise, if it continued forever, your whole blood would solidify, and that clearly would not be a good thing. There's a couple of other examples of positive feedback. Anybody know of any others? So labor, when a woman is giving birth to a child, the labor contractions stimulate more contractions, and it continues until the baby's born. That is an example of positive feedback. It increases the change resulting in the birth of a child. Another one, to a point, is fever. So if something gets into your body, let's say you get a bacterial infection and your body increases the fever, those changes continue increasing the fever again until a certain point. All this has to have an end or death would occur. Positive feedback out of control leads to disease. All right, so the one child starts crying and all the other kids in the room start crying. That's positive feedback. Now, a negative feedback could be if this child started comforting this one, that could bring stability, right? That could level things off. That was a change in the opposite direction. That would be an example of negative feedback. All right, let's look at that with regard to temperature control, homeostasis as with temperature control. So body temperature requires very careful homeostatic control. Anybody know what normal human body temperature is? Anastasia?
I think it's like 98.6.
98.6 Fahrenheit. What about Celsius? Anybody know Celsius? That's okay. We haven't learned any of this yet, Lane. I don't expect you to know it yet. We're kind of like going into what do you know? What are you coming into this with? So it's about 37 degrees Celsius is the same as 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, over the course of 24 hours, that really only fluctuates about a degree or more. If the body temperature falls down below 91 degrees, the person is probably going to die from what's called hypothermia, too little warmth, hypothermia. If the temperature goes above 108, death from hyperthermia is likely to occur. Now, the problem is we live in a world with a pretty wide range of temperatures. Depending on where you live, it could be over 100 degrees outside most of the time, or it could be below zero most of the time. So our bodies take a pretty active role in maintaining temperature control. So what happens when you get hot? What happens to your body when you start getting really hot? I know you all know this one. It's an easy one. Yeah, you sweat. You start to sweat almost as soon as the temperature of your skin hits 98.6, sweating begins. And the higher the temperature goes, the more you sweat. And you sweat because the water that's on the surface of your skin is going to evaporate, and it will take heat with it as it evaporates, cooling the body down. Now, in addition to sweating, the blood vessels that are near the surface of your skin dilate and they get bigger. Have you ever noticed when you're really hot, your face might turn red? You might get kind of flushed looking. That's because those blood vessels are dilating to let more heat escape. That heat radiates out from your skin. What about when you get cold? What happens when the temperature drops? You shiver, exactly. We start to shiver. Your body works to increase the production of heat. Shivering is tiny movements of the muscles that increase the production of heat. The body also works to conserve heat. So if the blood vessels get bigger when it's hot outside to let heat out, it makes sense that they're going to get smaller. They're going to constrict when it's cold. That's why you sometimes get a little bit pale looking when you get really cold, because those blood vessels shrink away and they actually move down a little bit away from the surface of the skin. Your sweating stops. That shivering increases that muscle activity, and all of this is an attempt to try to keep you cooler or warmer, to try to keep you warmer. Lane, yeah, you get goosebumps. So goosebumps are a way to, so we're going to learn you actually have a goosebump muscle attached to every one of the hairs in your skin. When that goosebump muscle contracts, it causes the hairs in your skin to stand up, and you get that little bump under your skin. So it's very similar to the way a cat's hair is going to stand up, except we don't have all that hair like a cat does. But our hairs stand up just a little bit too. And the idea there is to provide a little bit of insulation to keep you a little bit warmer when it's cold outside. Now, humans are what's called endothermic. Our body goes through all that in order to maintain temperature. All mammals and all birds are endothermic. Sometimes that's called warm-blooded, but warm-blooded isn't a good term. We are endotherms. We are endothermic beings, as opposed to the fish and amphibians and reptiles and invertebrates like, sea stars and worms and insects and all. Those are ectotherm. So they don't have these mechanisms that we've been talking about. Their temperatures are regulated by their surroundings. They have to lay out in the sun in order to stay warm, or lay in the shade to cool down. Sometimes that's called cold-blooded, but that's not really an accurate term either, because really some of them have pretty high body temperatures. They're not cold-blooded. So temperature regulation is just something that they do from the outside, where we regulate our temperature on the inside. All right. Now, temperature regulation, the kind that we go through, temperature regulation is an example of negative feedback. Remember, negative feedback brings stability. When the body temperature is too high, the body uses negative feedback to try to bring it back to normal. When the temperature is too low, the body uses negative feedback to try to return it to normal. Negative feedback brings stability. So remember this guy way back from your biology class, this cool organelle called mitochondria. Mitochondria is an organelle inside the cell. It takes a glucose or a sugar molecule and it converts the energy that's in that glucose into a form that we can use. So remember that in the process of photosynthesis, we're going back into biology now. In photosynthesis, energy from the sun is stored in a glucose molecule inside a plant or some other photosynthetic organism. Well, we eat that plant. Sorry, there's a question here. So if you get pale when you're cold, how come after you get outside your cheeks get red? It's the body trying to bring that the blood back to the surface to warm things up again. If you get too cold, if it gets to be that you're too cold, now your body is going to try to bring more blood into the area. What's interesting though, is it only brings blood to the core of the body, like the face, the chest. Your hands and your feet are going to stay cold. Your body sees them as basically dispensable. If it's a matter of staying alive or saving the fingers, it's going to keep the heart and the lungs and the brain alive at the expense of the fingers and toes if it needs to. Yeah, pretty complex, this homeostatic process. All right, so this glucose molecule is made by a plant. You eat the plant or you eat an animal that has eaten the plant. Now you've got that glucose, but you can't use glucose. Glucose has too much energy in it. If your body just broke open a glucose molecule, there would be so much energy in it that it would destroy the body. It would be like it would burn up the cell. So the body has a process called cellular respiration that takes that glucose molecule and puts it into little storage containers. Those little storage molecules that hold the energy needed by the cell are called ATP. Anybody remember what ATP stands for? What is the molecule ATP? What's that stand for? Ben?
Adenosine triphosphate.
Adenosine triphosphate, right, right. So we'll cover that molecule a lot. It is the energy molecule for all living things, adenosine triphosphate. Now, you might also remember that oxygen is required for that cellular respiration, the process that takes that big glucose molecule and breaks it down and puts the energy into ATP molecules. So clearly, oxygen is very important. Without oxygen, we can't make ATP. So the process by which we regulate oxygen is pretty complicated, and it involves a whole lot of chemistry, and we're not going to go into detail about all the chemistry right now that is needed for that. The important thing to remember is that when the oxygen levels in your blood drop below a certain level, you have sensors in your blood vessels and in your organs, and they send a message to the brain saying, we need more oxygen. The brain then sends a message to the lungs, telling the lungs to bring in more oxygen. The lungs respond, or the muscles surrounding the lungs respond by causing you to breathe deeper, to breathe faster. Like when you run, you know that happens to you when you run. You breathe very deeply, you breathe very fast. Well, the muscles need more oxygen in order to produce ATP to fuel that running, right? So now we have the brain telling the lungs to start working harder, and you breathe faster and even more deeply. That's another example of negative feedback. Oxygen levels too low, the body works to bring it back to normal. Negative feedback brings stability. All right. Another one is water control. So look there at all the things, and that's just a few of them, that water does in your body. It moistens your tissues. It protects your organs. It prevents constipation. It helps dissolve minerals and nutrients, moving them around the body. It regulates your temperature, lubricates your joints, reduces the burden on your kidneys and liver, and it carries the nutrients and the oxygen to the cells. So have you ever noticed that if you drink a lot of water in one sitting, it isn't very long before you have to go to the bathroom? It doesn't take very long. Drink a big giant container of water and you'll see that not very long. That's because your body only wants a certain amount of water in the blood, not too much, not too little. If there's too much, like when you drink a lot, your kidneys go right to work filtering out the extra water. They then send that water to your bladder, which stores it until it's full. And then you feel the urge to urinate. At the same time, if there's not enough water, you get thirsty. Again, this is an example of negative feedback bringing stability. If the water content is too high, your body works to bring it down. If the water content is too low, your body works to bring it up. Negative feedback brings stability. Another one is pH. So pH is the amount of acid or alkaline that's in your body. pH is one of those kind of difficult to understand terms because you have to know what acid and base are in order to understand what pH is, and you have to know what pH is to know what acid and base are. They're so related to one another. Just basically know that the blood normally has a pH reading of 7.365, let's say 7.4. Well, the pH inside your cells is actually closer to 7. So it's a little bit lower than the 7.4 that the blood is. Now, even small changes in pH can be harmful. And almost all the processes that take place in your body cause changes in pH. Your body causes changes in pH. Changes in pH can be damaging. So it's really critical that the body has a way to regulate pH. Fortunately, we do. We have chemicals that the body makes in reaction to acid-base levels that fluctuate. Anybody know what those chemicals are called? What we call the thing the body makes in order to regulate that? Again, no reason you should know these yet. They're called buffers. Ah, there you go, Ben. Sorry, said that just a little bit too fast. Yeah, buffers are chemical solutions that are made within the body to keep the pH within normal limits. Buffers work by negative feedback. If the blood gets too acidic, buffers bring it back to normal. If the blood gets too basic, buffers bring it back to normal. Again, negative feedback brings stability. All right, so now positive feedback. These are all examples of stability happening with negative feedback. But positive feedback happens in the body. It just doesn't happen very often. We've mentioned a couple of them already. Most of the time, when there's positive feedback happening, there's a disease state that is happening. There are a few times where it's important, where positive feedback is necessary. We talked about blood clotting. Once the blood clotting process starts, now there are enzymes that speed the process up, and it runs faster and faster and faster until bleeding stops, and then the process ends. So that's an example where positive feedback increases the change. Another one, this is labor. During the labor of a baby, the nerve impulses from the cervix, from the baby pushing on the cervix, are transmitted to the brain. The brain then stimulates the pituitary gland, which is a gland in the brain, to secrete a hormone called oxytocin. Oxytocin is carried in the blood to the uterus, where it stimulates the contractions of the muscles around the baby and pushes the baby back down toward the cervix again. That then sends a message to the brain again, which stimulates more oxytocin, which goes to the uterus, and it is a positive feedback cycle that continues until the birth of the baby. Positive feedback increases the change. So remember, negative feedback brings stability. Positive feedback increases the change, and the body works hard bringing both positive and negative feedback all the time to maintain homeostasis. What's your body doing right now? The one thing we know for sure it's trying to do is maintain homeostasis. You might be sitting, you might be walking, you might be tapping your foot. All of that, you can say, doesn't matter what else I'm doing, my body is working to maintain homeostasis. And it isn't like there's just one or the other. Often two loops are going to work together. So you're always gonna fluctuate. Your blood sugar is a good example of that. Your blood sugar is constantly going up and down through the day. I don't know if any of you guys know anybody who's diabetic. If you know anyone who's diabetic who wears one of those continuous glucose monitors, they usually on their phone, they'll have an app that shows blood glucose levels, and you can see the changes that there are. It's never a straight line. The blood sugar stays straight. It goes up and it's brought back down. It goes down and it's brought back up. Now, the same thing happens with all of us. It just usually is a bigger swing in somebody who's diabetic. And if you're not diabetic, you don't usually wear the monitors, so you can't really look at your own. But when you have a blood sugar, when you eat, your blood sugar is going to go up. One negative feedback loop is going to bring your blood sugar down. It's one loop is going to keep you from getting too cold. Another is going to keep you from getting too hot. One is going to keep water levels good. One is going to keep oxygen levels good. So a negative and a negative feedback loop bringing something down, and a negative one bringing something up is the norm. That's pretty common. Yeah. Yep. So The thing to remember here is that it's rarely easy. So I have this interactive I want to show you. This looks like this. I'm going to drag this one in so you can see it at work. So this will show you that your body is constantly at work to maintain homeostasis. And it isn't just working on blood sugar. It isn't just working on oxygen. It's doing all of them all at the same time, constantly, day and night. So we can start this interaction, and you can see here, I want to do things. She doesn't feel good. So I need to do things. Let's increase the heart rate. Now that brought the blood delivery into the normal, but look what it did to respiration. So now the respiration is low. I need to raise respiration a little bit. Respiration isn't wanting to go up. Maybe we need to dilate up, bring our blood pressure down a little bit. Oh no, that took it up. All right, there. Oh, look, we have, oh, but look what that did to blood delivery. Now I need to bring blood. Now I've got, look, got 4 of them. What do we need to do to bring respiration? Yay! Finally, we have success in all those areas. But now our subject starts running. And now the blood delivery has gone down. The oxygen need is not being met. The blood pressure is lower. So now we need to change these things again. And whatever you're constantly changing, you're constantly moving, all of those things need to be balanced all the time. And your body does this perfectly and has been doing it since you existed and will continue doing it as long as you are alive. Are there times when we go out of homeostasis? Sure. There absolutely are times when the homeostatic mechanism doesn't work the way it's supposed to. But for the most part, our bodies do what they need to do to keep us healthy. So let's talk a little bit about homeostasis. Tell me, what's the fundamental principle behind the concept of homeostasis? Not photosynthesis. What's homeostasis trying to do? Keep your body stable. Yeah. So if you picture that, where's the picture I had here? This one. Picture this trying to stabilize. That's a good image of photosynthesis, of homeostasis. If you have ever stood on one of those kind of balance boards and you know how hard it is to keep completely level, that's what your body's trying to do. Keep you stable as you go through the day-to-day living. Let me go back to this again here now. So, all right, next question. Why is that important? Why is it essential for the body to regulate its internal environment? This is not a quiz, but pretend like it is, and you have to answer. Talani.
The body could die.
It could get sick, and that sickness could lead to death. Unchecked, the loss of homeostasis, the inability to regulate the internal environment, can result in death. Yes, absolutely. All right. What happens when the body fails to maintain homeostasis? Can you think of any real life scenarios where this may occur? Monica.
You could go into hypothermic shock if your body got too cold, or you could get heat exhaustion if you were out in the sun for too long.
Yep.
If your body wasn't able to regulate the temperature enough.
Yep. Excellent. Those are good real life scenarios. You guys have probably all had it happen that you were running and you were running so hard that you got a stitch in your side, you know, and maybe even you like collapsed. Has anybody run to the point of exhaustion to where you collapse and you just have to keep gasping? Well, that was where your body was beginning to lose the fight. Now you clearly are all still here, so it worked. Lane says, because the outside world changes a lot. Yeah, absolutely. The outside world is constantly changing. That's why we have to check the weather every morning when we get up. What do I need to wear to go outside today? So yeah, we've talked throughout the course, throughout the day today, of a lot of real life scenarios where the body would fail to maintain homeostasis. So let's think about the different systems of your body, even the ones that we've talked about today. How do those different organ systems collaborate to achieve homeostasis? This is a question that will appear in almost all of your exams. As you are learning about the skeletal system, I will ask you to tell me how the skeletal system works with 2 or 3 other systems of your body to maintain homeostasis. So get used to thinking along this line. We study the systems individually. We have to. There's no real way to study it otherwise. So when we study the skeletal system, that's what we're focusing on, but it doesn't work alone. The skeletal system works, it collaborates with lots of other systems in order to keep you healthy, in order to maintain that internal balance. Anastasia.
One example is the circulatory system and respiratory system work very closely. So like if your body needs more oxygen, the respiratory system is going to help, your lungs are going to bring in more oxygen, but the respiratory system isn't like distributing it. So you need the circulatory system and the blood cells and stuff to distribute it throughout the body so that whatever organs you need get the oxygen they need, and vice versa if you like have too much oxygen or whatever.
Excellent, excellent. So I hope you are writing that down because you can give me that answer in the test question. That's perfect. That's a perfect way to say it. Yeah, even when we're talking about just the skeletal system. So this is the bones of your body. They work with the muscles because a bunch of bones that don't have any muscles to move them are useless. So we have to have collaboration between the skeletal system and the muscular system in order to maintain homeostasis. We certainly have to have the oxygen and the fuel brought to us. The skeletal system is not going to be able to stay healthy if it doesn't get nutrients from the digestive system. So all these different organ systems work together. They are not independent of one another along any level. So think about this, chronic stress. So we are always under stress. Stress is part of life, and it's a healthy part of life. It's only when stress becomes chronic, when it doesn't go away, when we're dealing with something. Like, just the fever that we talked about is an example. Fever is a stress. It's usually what's called acute, meaning it happens temporarily, does its job, and then your body moves out of the febrile state. If you have a fever that lasts a long time, that's called chronic stress. So that's just one example. How might chronic stress impact the body's ability to maintain homeostasis? Lane?
Can you hear me?
That's okay.
Can you
You
hear
think
me?
it helps it?
Say again?
Yeah, go ahead, Lane.
Okay. Chronic stress, for a lot of people in my family, we're constantly stressed out. And I think it affects like how much sleep you can get, and sleep affects a lot of other things. Like while you sleep, it repairs stuff that needs to be repaired. It like cleans out your brain. So I think that could be something.
Yeah, excellent. That's an excellent example. Any other thoughts? Anastasia.
I just wanted to mention, like, I noticed a lot of the processes that the body uses to maintain homeostasis are not viable long term and can be detrimental to other parts of your body. Like, obviously, if you're breathing really deeply for like 2 seconds, it's not going to do anything harmful to your body. If you're breathing really deeply for 10 minutes, 10 hours, your muscles are going to get tired. Other parts of your body are going to suffer. So, like temporary stress, your body can deal with it, but chronic stress, like those mechanisms that they're using can get really dangerous. And obviously that will throw your body off balance.
Yes, excellent. Absolutely. All right, let's look at another one. Are there instances where the body intentionally disrupts homeostasis for a specific purpose? There are. I'll give you a hint. Yes, there are. Anybody ever heard of the fight or flight response? You're walking down the street and a dog comes after you. and it's coming running, snarling, charging, you go into fight or flight, and homeostasis is out the window. The body is not concerned about balance. It is not concerned about pH levels. It is not concerned about temperature regulation. pH, all it needs is to get you out of danger right away. So temporarily, the body will disrupt homeostasis in a number of those kind of stressful situations. Yeah, savanna to fight diseases and infection is another good example of where it might intentionally disrupt homeostasis for that purpose, but it's always a temporary disruption. The body then, as soon as the crisis is over, the body will go back into all the mechanisms to try to bring balance back to the body. All right, what are some factors that can influence the body's ability to adapt and maintain homeostasis as we age? So think about your health now compared to someone who's very old, maybe a grandparent or a great-grandparent. How is their body functioning differently that affects their ability to adapt and maintain homeostasis? Or not even how's their body behaving, what are some lifestyle choices that they're making that are affecting their body's ability to maintain homeostasis? Lane.
My grandpa, he's a smoker and he's very weak, so that could like impair him.
Yep.
My dad too. So.
Yep, that's a good example. Choices that we make have many of them have a building impact. So smoking is a good example. Smoking is never good for you. The longer you do it, the worse it is for you. So someone who's older is going to suffer if they've smoked for a long time. Think also about the way that a lot of older people eat. A lot of times older people don't get enough protein. That's a pretty common problem in our culture now because they go for a lot of junk food, a lot of things that have strong flavors. As their taste buds begin to die after years and years, they want things that taste really strong, and those heavily processed foods taste better than natural foods do, so that's what they'll go for. A lot of times people, as they age, they don't get the exercise that they do when they're younger, and that can impact the ability to maintain homeostasis. All right, here's another one. How has our understanding of homeostasis influenced medical treatments and interventions? Just as an example, it used to be when people were sick, they would draw blood out of them. They called it bleeding them. You know, that was just back in the 1800s that they thought that people who were sick had too much blood. So we have to draw some blood out of them. Well, what do we know about homeostasis now that has changed all that? Well, we now know that the body needs to maintain a certain level of blood. In fact, if you, I think you have to be 18 or 17 in order to give blood. But if you donate blood, like to the Red Cross, it's not very long. Your body replaces the liquid part of your blood in just a couple days. It takes a little bit longer, a month or so, for all of the cells to be back, for all the red and white cells to be recovered. But the body goes right to work at putting that blood back. So knowing that has influenced that medical treatment. All right, how about this one? Last question here. Can you think of any ethical considerations related to interfering with the body's homeostatic mechanisms? We'll talk a little bit about ethics as we go through the course. So ethics is related to right and wrong, right and wrong. So if you're going to be put into a study where you're intentionally going to disrupt your homeostatic mechanism, that's where the ethics would come in. Do we want to put a person on a treadmill and run them to exhaustion? Might be some ethics involved in that one. All right. I think, let me see if there's anything else. This was good. Thank you guys very much for your conversation. I just want to mention a couple things. We don't have time to do them today, but from time to time, we will use this resource. Anybody heard of JetPunk before? JetPunk is a fun trivia game. Actually, we may have time for it. Let me pull up a Jet. I also use Kahoot once in a while. Let me see here. Okay, this is a real easy one. This is called, so I'll show you just how this works. 3-letter body part quiz. So this would be the body parts that have 3 letters in them. So you guys can either type it or yell it out and I will type it in. Let's see if we can get them all in the, what time do we have? 2 minutes. Ready? Go.
Arm, ear,
Eye,
We're half done. Hand has 4. This is just 3-letter ones. Yep, good. We're more than half. What do you eat your dinner with?
lip,
Lip? Jaw? 2 more. 1 more. If you type something in and I don't see it, say it out loud because it's not always easy to see them go by. You ready to give up?
Your gums.
Yeah! Very good, Jelani. Got it there at the end. All right, excellent. So that's what JetPunk is. And then Kahoot is just a quiz game. It's like a multiple choice kind of game, and we will do that from time to time too. We don't really have time to use it today, but what I usually do is I'll have either a JetPunk or a Kahoot ready at the end. So if there's a little extra time when we finish up, then we'll do those. But they're just for fun, so I don't use them all that often. All right, this was great. Thank you for your participation. I really do appreciate it. Anybody have any questions? All right, as you get started with the lessons, if anything doesn't make sense or you need more details, you have questions about anything, please let me know. Odds are pretty good if you have a question, somebody else does too. Lane.
I was wondering if you could go over like the breaks that we're gonna have for this semester.
We only take a break at Thanksgiving, the winter break, and the spring break.
Okay.
That's it. All the other ones, like the 1-day holidays, we still have class.
Okay. Could you like send me information so I could like write them down on my calendar? Cause
You can actually see it all on the AIM Academy calendar.
Okay.
Just go to aimacademy.com and there's a academic calendar right on there. And it
Okay,
should
so-
also be on our class calendar. That's probably on there.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's just those 3, easy to remember. Thanksgiving is a week, holiday is 3 weeks, and then spring break is a week. And I think that's March is when our spring break is. Yep. Every other day we have class. All right, thank you all for coming. I'm looking forward to this class.
Thank
All right,
you.
I'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
You.
Bye.
Go maintain
Thank you.
homeostasis, all right? Bye.